Hello, welcome to Module 1 of the CASP Toolkit. Today we're going to go over Module 1, how to use it and go through this with your client. So the idea or the reason behind Module 1 is to give you the opportunity to address the concept of community and social participation with your client. So as I mentioned in the introductory video, each module will contain an outline. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up Module 1 outline here. So it is estimated that it will take approximately an hour to complete Module 1 with your client. The objectives of Module 1 are that after completing this module, your client will be able to identify the health benefits of CASP, identify their own barriers and facilitators to CASP, identify or describe the role of occupational therapy within community and social participation, and to identify their own goals and action plans related to CASP. So you will have in the next, I'll take you over to the educational slides in a minute, but in this module, there will be slides that you can go through with your clients that go over some background of community and social participation and the role of OT. After you go through that educational material, I think it's a very interactive educational material, and a lot of different things should come forward that will help you in deciding what assessment tools that you might want to do. And then there is an opportunity for goal setting. I have a couple of sample goals here for you to look at, but as I mentioned before, each module of this toolkit is centered around a component of community and social participation that's either a barrier or an enabler according to a review of the literature. But as you're going through the education with your client, it's very interactive and there's opportunities for your client to kind of brainstorm their own barriers or enablers. So as you go through Module 1, you should be developing a pretty clear idea of what modules you might need to complete with your client. So if your client is identifying that they have a strong fear of falling when they're out in the community, Module 2 might be a good module for you to do with your client. So an example, and you can use that for writing your goals. So if your client has a high fear of falling and that's preventing them from going out, an example of a goal you might write for that client is the client will use 2 anxiety management strategies during a community outing. And then that would guide you that you need to follow up with Module 2. So if your client is identifying that they're really concerned about environmental barriers, maybe they have a cane and they're nervous about managing curbs or steps, you might know that you need to go to Module 4, and that might guide you to write a goal designed around Module 4, such as the client will safely navigate a curb during community outings. So I do have various sample goals for you to look at here. You'll notice when you look at, let's say, I guess, Module 2, Fear of Falling, I have 2 different types of goals here. The first one is client will use 2 anxiety management strategies during a community outing. So that would be your very action-based goal if you were getting the client out in the community. But maybe your job setting doesn't allow you to go out in the community with clients. You might be able to write more of a short-term goal, such as the client will identify 2 strategies to reduce the fear of falling in 3 sessions. So feel free to come back to this as a way just to wrap your brain around how to write different goals. When you look at Module 6, I think this is really interesting. It talks about virtual reality and technology as a way of staying engaged socially. So you might write a goal such as the client will independently identify 3 virtual safety concerns. Because we know that's a huge issue. If we're teaching our clients how to use Facebook or Messenger to interact with their family or grandkids, it's very important that we're also addressing the safety component of that. Okay, and then it wraps up the Module 1 outline with an action plan. So I do have an action plan template in each folder that is meant for the client to use in between sessions as a way of following up and kind of developing a sense of self-efficacy. So I'm going to take you to the action plan template now. So when you're back in the main folder of Module 1, you'll see Assessments and Resources here. So when you click on that, the action plan template is right here. I love this template for a variety of different reasons, but what I really like about it is it holds you as the OTP responsible for making sure the client is choosing an action plan that's feasible. So at the bottom, it has the client rate. This is how sure I am that I will be able to do this. So you really want to make sure that your client is down here in the very sure section. If they're rating that they're not very sure they can do it, but they're willing to give it a go, you might want to guide them to create an action plan that they have a better chance of achieving. So I really like this action plan. I recommend that you use it at the end of every module or every session to give your client something that they can actively work on towards their goals. Okay, so I want to jump back over to the didactic education. So this PowerPoint is meant to be something that you go through with your client. I feel like for many occupational therapy practitioners, we are busy. There are productivity standards. We've got to be moving, moving, moving. And I feel like in my personal experience, there has been a push towards doing versus educating. And oftentimes it's really important for our clients to take meaningful action towards their goal, that they have a background understanding to the topic and why it's so important. So these are the goals that we went over, or the objectives earlier in the module outline, but I would review these with your client so they can kind of know what to expect from this. The background of this topic is really interesting and important. We know that the population is aging, and for the first time in the history of the world, in 2020, the number of adults 60 and older outnumbered those 5 and younger. So that is a pretty big shift. And in the next 10 years, 10 to 20 years, that number is expected to double. So there's this growing number of older adults. And we know that older adults are more likely to be living alone, managing chronic conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, COPD. They're having difficulty with physical and mental decline, and all of these things affect their ability to stay active in community and social activities. Furthermore, we know that once clients start reducing their activity in community and social activities, that they have increased risk of falls, cognitive decline, depression, poor management of health, and all of these relate to increased risk of hospital admissions. And so it's a cycle. And as occupational therapists, we have a role to jump in and say, hey, we've noticed that you are not getting out as much as you used to, and here's what we can do to help you and help you break this cycle. So what is community and social participation? And this is really worth exploring with your client. Um, there are a variety of ways to stay active and participate in community and social activities. And so I think it's interesting to get your client to kind of brainstorm about what that might look like for them. So here's just a couple list of basic community and social activities, but maybe encourage your client to brainstorm about this a little bit more. Can they use technology, Zoom, Facebook, Pinterest as a way to stay connected socially? Or is there a way, if they are not able to leave their house, that they can still volunteer by writing letters, making phone calls, where they're still connected to the community and to society in a way that is meaningful to them? So community and social participation can look like a lot of different things for a lot of different people. The next slide really encourages the client to think about how they are currently active in the community. Then it transitions to why it's so important. So we know that whenever people are not active and they're experiencing that social isolation and loneliness, there are huge health risks associated with that. But the evidence shows that those who are active in the community and socially have increased quality of life and positive health outcomes. So it's really important that they are trying to find ways to stay active. This slide goes over some barriers to community and social participation, which many of us are very aware of working with older adults. Um, Thinking about living alone is often a barrier, especially for adults who are used to going out with a spouse, or maybe their spouse was the one who initiated the social activities. Chronic conditions such as urinary frequency, diabetes, managing Parkinson's medications, all of those chronic conditions can really impact a person's ability to stay active. Use of assistive devices, walker canes, or wheelchairs can be a problem, as well as transportation. So after you go over a list of barriers to community and social participation, have the client kind of problem solve what are their specific barriers. What are they seeing in their own life that is making it difficult for them to stay engaged? And then refocusing on the enablers, what is helping them stay active? So the evidence finds that caregiver support is a huge enabler to community and social participation. Even those older adults who are having chronic conditions, decreased mobility, using adaptive equipment or assistive equipment, clients who have all of those things going on but have supportive caregivers are more likely to stay active in community and social activities. So then you want to encourage the client to think about what's helping them stay engaged. What are their enablers or facilitators? And then you're going to move into why does OT care about all of this? So many people know from their experience, or older adults know from their experience in the healthcare setting, that occupational therapy works on the daily stuff, dressing, bathing, toileting, upper body things. So I think it's really important to stress that OT helps clients with the things, of course, that they have to do and need to do, like dressing, bathing, and toileting, but also the things that they want to do and how those want to do meaningful occupations really impact their health and wellness. Each module ends with a wrap up. So after they finish with this module 1 education, I encourage you to go through any pre-testing or assessments that you might find necessary. So after you have went through this PowerPoint with your client, you probably have a fairly good idea of what their barriers are, what their enablers are, and how they're currently active. So that should help you decide or think about what sort of assessment tools you might want to do and help you with setting some goals. So after you kind of set your goals, think about what other modules are going to be important for you to go through. Module 1 is kind of a one and done. You're going through this module, you're setting your goals, and then you're moving on to the subsequent modules as needed. Each subsequent module can last as short or as long as you need it to last in order to meet those given goals. So after you set your goals and decide what modules that you are going to work on, you are going to schedule your follow-up visits. And again, the length of each follow-up module will depend on your client's needs. I also encourage you to have your client talk to their family and friends about their goals. Sometimes it's not something that's fun to talk about when you're having difficulty going out and doing the things you want to do. There's a lot of shame in that and asking for help, but I think it's important that you encourage your client to be open with their support system about what their needs are and their goals are. Okay, so I'm going to back out of here, go to the main folder again. And so let's move on to assessments. In this folder, I have a variety of assessment tools for you to choose from, and this list is by no means exclusive. Feel free to use whatever assessment tool you find is helpful for you. I do really like the COPM for a goal setting tool. It does cost to use. I did include in here this goal setting form that's in Appendix 2, if that's something that you want to use. There are a couple assessment tools that I think are really interesting in here. Of course, the SLUMS, if you're having some cognitive concerns about your client, just to get a baseline of where they are. The Life Space Questionnaire is a really interesting tool, and this takes a look at how much space a client takes up in life. So the idea behind this assessment tool is the more space a person takes up, the healthier they are. So it starts by asking very basic